So, well, people will ask questions in the chat window, and then
We are here at the Utah Manufacturers Association, and as everyone is coming online here, we just wanted to do a few housekeeping items. We're going to conduct this webinar today. If there's any technical issues that you have, we'll do our best to resolve them. As you can imagine, with all of the different services available, sometimes some of the audio or video may be a little bit slow, so be patient. Sometimes you may have to refresh. If you're on a PC, you may hit F5 to refresh, and if you're on a Mac, you can hit Command R to do some refresh in case it gets frozen up. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of these that are going on right now. So we'll do our best to keep everyone flowing and going with what we're doing here. So I think we've got most of our participants available here. If you have any, everyone is on mute by default. If you have any items you'd like to bring up, please use the chat, which is down at the bottom, and we'll do our best to respond to that. So I'll hand it over and introduce Cedro Toro to introduce our guests and the topic what we're going to tackle today. So Cedro, we'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Ryan. Welcome everybody to the UMA webinar. We're going to use this webinar series to try and provide value to the UMA members. We want to make sure we're giving information that's timely and that can help your businesses thrive. And I think today's conversation is going to be a good one. We're going to discuss how to manage your supply chain and all aspects of that from start to finish. And we've got a couple of experts on the line today here from Visible SCM. This is Brian Bowers and Casey Adams. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
We're glad you could join us. So we're going to ask these guys some questions. And if you have questions for them on how to manage your supply chain and any aspect of your business, please, as Ryan said, just type it into the comment section there. If you go to the bottom of your screen, there should be a little chat window. Just type it in there. There's a Q&A window as well, but I'm not sure how to work that. So we're going to stick with the chat window. But just type your questions in there, and then we'll see if we can get Brian and Casey to answer those, and we'll have a good conversation. Okay, so to dive in, Casey, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you guys are and what you do over at Visible SCM?
Okay, I'm Casey Adams. I'm the president of Visible Supply Chain Management, or Visible SCM, and we specialize in managing the supply chain for business-to-consumer businesses, so businesses that ship directly to consumers. In that regard, we do product and order fulfillment, so pick and pack and ship. We do a couple million parcels per month of that. We also do freight, LTL, and truckload freight to help support that supply chain activity for our customers. We also sell packaging, both custom packaging that we make ourselves, as well as we broker packaging for our customers. In those three verticals, we really support a substantial network of small parcel shipping. We're the largest reseller of the U.S. Postal Service, as well as a reseller of DHL, and we have relationships with a variety of other small parcel carriers. So basically an end-to-end solution for our customers, allowing them to do everything once the manufacturing is done to get their products to market if the market ends at somebody's front porch. Kind of ancillary to that, we do dabble a lot in businesses that do not necessarily end at someone's front porch. We help food manufacturers a lot with our freight organization and our packaging. That's just one example, but we do play in a lot of different parts of the supply chain, but our true specialty is around supply chains that end at someone's home.
Perfect. And you're the CEO. Brian, what's your role there?
Hi there. Brian Bowers, Chief Operating Officer. The only thing that I would chip in here is just that as part of our services, we're providing geographic solutions. So, we're located in Salt Lake, in Atlanta, in Memphis, in Cincinnati, providing the best coverage and cost solutions for our clients. So
awesome. Okay, well, thank you. You guys definitely have the experience to help us out in this situation. I guess that's the big question everybody has is, how has this COVID-19 pandemic affected you guys? And you guys got hit with a double whammy because, here in Salt Lake, we got the COVID-19 and then we got hit with some earthquakes, right in the middle of it. And just so everybody on the line understands, I was talking to Brian earlier, and he explained to me that he's got one warehouse that's aligned with the racking north to south, and the other warehouse where the racking is aligned east to west. And I guess the earthquake took out one of those, but not the other one. What was going on there?
Yeah, just the way that it flowed through caused the one group of racking to teeter side to side. We had about 25% of our inventory on the floor. So pretty tough.
So what other impacts is the COVID-19 having on your business or the business of your customers? What are you guys seeing?
So we're seeing a couple different things, especially as they pertain to supply chain. One thing that I think everyone is seeing, we do have some customers that are seeing a pretty dramatic slowdown caused by the COVID-19 and the efforts to combat it. And so we are seeing customers with a slowdown and the problems there. But we're also seeing customers with a rapid acceleration of their business. We have a few customers who sell hand sanitizer products and some homeopathic, and then we also have some medicinal customers, people who sell and distribute over-the-counter and prescription medications. And so we have a pretty broad array of customers that are seeing huge shocks in the positive direction, where it looks like Black Friday and it has for 2 weeks. And then we have other customers that have seen an inability to get products that were coming in from China. So those really predate the impact here in the US of COVID-19. And then finally, we have those customers where their demand shocks are killing them the opposite direction. It doesn't seem that Versace slippers are a high priority for people right now. And so we're not shipping a lot of those for Versace.
That's shocking because I just put in an order yesterday.
Okay, well, I'll get it out to you.
Gold studded.
Well, let's start with the bad news first, I guess. So there's companies that are experiencing a dramatic downturn. Orders are dropping off. What are some things that they could be doing to help minimize the impact that that's going to have on their inventory, their cash flow? I mean, what are some techniques maybe that you guys are seeing that could be effective for somebody going through that rapid, reduction in sales?
So a lot of this, there's the shock and then the potential recessionary activity that will follow. And assuming that that's the case, then the goal in this time period is to preserve cash. And so preserving cash means lots of different things to each business, different businesses. But the big piece is getting as efficient as possible in all the processes and in the supply chain, so that you're not spending extra cash and you don't have cash tied up. So one of the big problems that customers have is their working capital gets stressed because they're holding too much inventory. They're paying too much for their services. They're not adjusting to their demand. So preserving cash is a huge piece of that. So they have to be watching that very closely. The second, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought, and then I'll
well, the second piece is, these types of events and these times, whether it's a shock or a recession, these are when kings are made. And so the companies that batten down the hatches and only focus on survival, those companies will be unseated by those who choose to innovate, those who really aggressively go after their markets in different ways. So I think there's a mix of activity that needs to happen. Of course, you have to preserve the cash up front to stay in business.
Mm-hmm. And I would add that these sorts of shocks, they act as a magnifier and they act as an accelerator. So everyone knows what to do in your business if your demand is declining. Everyone knows what to do. You shift your products, you change to something that has a higher demand that you can produce, and you produce that instead, right? Everyone knows that's what you do. If people stop buying horn-rimmed glasses, you stop selling horn-rimmed glasses, then you stop making horn-rimmed glasses, and you move through your plan that way, right? And so this just accelerates and magnifies the impact of that. it makes it so that instead of it being a demand decline over an extended period that you can work slowly and accommodate, you need to work quickly and accommodate. You need to look at what you're capable of doing and how you can shift that to something that has an immediate demand. So we have seen customers, for example, take their lotion bottles. They were on a shortened supply of the bottles that they put their lotion product into, but that bottle met very nicely with the pump that they use on their hand sanitizer, and the size of the bottle was similar to their hand sanitizer bottle that they weren't able to get in from China. So they made that shift and increased the amount of hand sanitizer that they were producing, while decreasing the amount of lotion that they were producing. You can imagine if they did that slowly, it would put them out of business. And if they do that quickly, it makes them more money. So it's to Brian's point of, this is a time when kings are made because of the amplifiers and the accelerators caused by these shocks.
Okay, so number one, we got to manage our cash, be on top of it. Number two, get efficient. Number three, look for the products that are selling and shift quickly to what the market is still demanding. Now, I imagine if my sales are dropping off rapidly and I've got long lead time supplies coming from overseas, it's really hard to turn off that faucet, quickly and just, hold that ship mid-ocean, right? I don't need those bottles anymore, right? So what are some things that companies can do that have, their supply chain's already been flowing and now their demand's drop, what do they do? How do they deal with their suppliers and manage that cash effectively?
Well, they can always go back in time. I think that worked well for Back to the Future.
Yes, get in the DeLorean and
there it is.
What's going to happen. Yeah.
No, that's really a fundamentally difficult problem, because it's trying to turn the Titanic with a canoe paddle, right? And that's really a hard thing to do. And so I think there are two answers to your question. And one is the best practices in the industry that you should have been doing, which is keep alternate suppliers, have a minority supplier and a majority supplier. Even though it's more expensive to have that minority supplier, it gives you a redundancy that's necessary, and that only really becomes valued in times like these. And make sure that when you create that alternative path of supply, that you get it in from a completely different environment. I think a lot of people are finding that their supply chain, when they have multiple suppliers, they all still ended in China, and that's a problem. Manufacturing in the United States should rise as a result of this COVID-19 outbreak. I think that all of the manufacturers in the U.S. will see a big benefit from this, as U.S. companies realize that their infrastructure is more fragile than they thought, and that the redundancy that they believed they had was not actually redundancy. And so I think we will see some changes in patterns of activity that will arise out of that. But that doesn't help very much today. Brian, do you have any good ideas for what they can do today? Yeah, I gave him the hard one. I took the easy one.
Yeah, I think it really does come down to the practices that they were employing, right? I mean, if you're on a 12-week lead time from China, and you have months of inventory in the queue, you can negotiate, you can work down, you can cut, you can try to negotiate out of POs that are already cut, those kind of things, and definitely you should try to do that. But some of these practices, they are things that we should just be doing as a matter of course of business. A couple things about the manufacturing options, some of those things that can help. One of those is we sometimes are buying finished goods from China. So a good example of this is years ago, Provocraft, a Utah company. When I was part of the UMA board, we learned of their success in making a big change where they used a concept called postponement, but the idea is instead of forecasting buying a whole bunch of different SKUs of finished goods, they were using their cartridges for the machines that they had. They were actually waiting to receive those cartridges in, then programming them locally, printing the packaging locally, and then being able to disperse those. So they were really only buying one SKU of a still considered raw good, finishing it locally, but with a great degree of accuracy based on the actual consumption of the goods. So then you get out of these big forecasting activities that are happening where you're trying to forecast goods months in advance, placing orders months in advance, always off, and having either tons of inventory or tons of stockouts that are affecting your business. So, I mean, that's when we're talking about dealing with China, that's a biggie.
So there's separating your supply chain so that you're having multiple suppliers from different areas, different geographies, so that you have less impact when something happens. There's moving more of that domestic, so it's at least closer to you. And then there's buying more general goods and general materials and moving some of the final product assembly or programming in-house so that you have more control over that. And all of those are things that can reduce your risk on the one hand, or actually lower your inventory levels on the other hand. And so those would all be best practices. If I haven't done all that, are you guys seeing, and companies obviously will learn from this today and maybe implement some of those best practices, but if I haven't done that already, are you seeing suppliers willing to negotiate out of contracts? Or are they willing to slow things down or move things back into future purchases through like vendor managed inventory and things like that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, all of those things exist and people can do them. Like, it's just how effectively can you negotiate those?
Yeah.
And that's good.
Maybe we'll do a webinar on negotiating techniques next.
I think what we see though, what we see, and this maybe this is a little bit of a segue, but what we see is that clients actually go to the demand side. They try to manage the demand.
Mm-hmm.
So we see, because we're dealing with direct to consumer type companies, we see a lot of channel activity. We see a lot of promotion activity, a lot of marketing activity that then is trying to manage the demand side, create demand around certain SKUs that you might have too much of, or bundles or various different programs to try to move those through the channel or direct to consumer.
So I can't slow down my incoming materials. I got to keep the flow going out high. What are some of those strategies? How do I grow my my market or my product offering or focus? What techniques can you have to keep the flow of your supply chain moving on, like you said, the customer side?
Mm-hmm. Well, you see some pretty obvious and visceral methods for that happening right now, even with like restaurants, for example, where you don't think of them as a supply chain problem, but that's a wonderful example of taking a demand constraint where, oh, you're not allowed to sit in the restaurant anymore, and they're doing curbside and they're doing drive-through windows or drive-up windows, right? So they're able to affect their demand from zero back up to something. So they can get some throughput of product and also get some revenue in, and I think that's kind of a microcosm example. It's difficult to say exactly how each business should resolve that problem, but the principle is I think pretty fundamental. You've had a large enough both supply and demand shock that you have to adjust both. So you need to work vigorously on controlling your supply side. And you have to look at creative ways to resolve your demand side. So some examples of that could be, maybe you've never really leaned into e-commerce. Now would be a really good time to do that. And that could give you then an outlet.
Changing your actual distribution channel, right? If you're a brick and mortar and now you're moving to e-commerce, like the restaurants are moving to, a delivery model, right?
Yeah. So that's a good example, because it does allow you to keep doing that throughput. And I didn't want to make it about a plug, because of course we specialize in e-commerce. So, but the point is that
don't plug Visible SCM's ability to help people deliver to the customer.
Yeah, but that would be an example, and we are seeing a lot of activity in that area. One of the things that we do is provide rates to businesses to utilize U.S. Postal Service more effectively, and as well as software to let them do that. And so we're seeing a lot of activity in that part of our business, where people who maybe in the past dabbled or ignored e-commerce. And now they're saying, well, I can't get this to my customer any other way, but they really need my lavender soap, right? And so now they launch themselves into an e-commerce environment in a world that is stay at home right now and buying a lot online. And that does affect the demand side. I think you'll also see some more traditional methods, repricing, or marketing and advertising, like delivery, for example. You're seeing a lot of supermarkets really pumping up the fact that they do deliver products to your home, or that you can get a curbside pickup there. That was something they already had, but they hadn't accelerated it as a marketing thing. This is a great time to do that. We're also seeing some businesses where they're stepping completely out of their normal history. Facebook, for example, is really trying to prop up small businesses that utilize Facebook. And so they're offering grants to people who want to launch a small business through Facebook, right?
Wow.
And so that's a way that Facebook is both helping those businesses and growing their user base.
You're taking me back to MBA school where we talked about product, price, placement, and promotion. And you touched on all those things, right? You have to adjust your product to be what the customer's demanding, adjust your price maybe to give people an incentive to buy, adjust the placement by having different distributions going more online or giving different methods to deliver. And then promotion, like how are you marketing and how are you getting the word out there? Particularly in an environment where people are kind of hunkering down and holding on to their dollars. I mean, I'm doing that and I'm trying not to, right? My wife and I are ordering food from Slapfish, which is our favorite restaurant. We pull up front and the guy walks it out with his rubber gloves on and hands it to us through the window.
Lobster rolls. You gotta get those lobster rolls in, man.
That's right. You can't go without those, it would be a crime. But it's really interesting. Do you guys have examples? Are there any of your, you mentioned the Versace slippers, are there any of your clients that are surprise winners right now where they're actually addressing those 4 Ps and you're actually seeing their products still, fly off the shelves despite the fact that, they're not selling face masks or hand sanitizers, right? Who's reacting well and what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, our e-commerce clients are great examples. Almost all of them are growing right now. We have 2 coffee companies that we provide coffee. Individuals are usually getting their coffee from the office, and now they're at home, and so they're ordering their.
Still need that coffee. 4
They're
cups.
ordering, yeah, their little pod coffees for their coffee machines, and those are basically at 2 times their normal volume, running almost as if we were in Black Friday type activity.
Really?
Yeah. And again, those are interesting examples. We have apparel providers also that are actively promoting. Like right now is when you're seeing a lot of promotions, a lot of activity from those companies that know how to do this. Facebook was reporting that their spend in their recent quarterly, they were talking about how their spend was falling. At the same time, companies that are spending right now on ad dollars are getting good response because there's so many people at home. It's really interesting to see that happening.
Yeah,
I
So
think
the message is get out there and promote, right? You can still sell, right? If people still need your goods, get out there and get the word out that you're ready, right? To ship
and
it.
figure out how your good is relevant. I think that the coffee providers are interesting because that's not an obviously relevant good, but the reality is Starbucks is shut down, right? And so that's a different world. That's a different world for a lot of people who drink coffee, and they're the unintended beneficiaries. Now, what they do with being the unintended beneficiary is important also. Are they now making it better and easier and more tasty or whatever? They get this new marketplace, and what are they going to do to capitalize on that new marketplace?
so they can hold on to it.
Yeah, so they can hold on to it afterwards. We're also seeing a real surge within like homeopathic remedies who are pivoting to address the coronavirus and saying how a healthy immune system is going to help you to fight it off. Even if you get the coronavirus, this is still going to help if you have a healthy immune system. Buy vitamins, right? And so I'm seeing marketing campaigns that are helping to drive a surge in growth tied directly to health and wellness. And it may not be as spot on as the hand sanitizer, for example, but it's a slight pivot in their normal messaging to address the existing time period. I think those coffee companies are doing some of that as well. They're saying, hey,
I think that,
Starbucks is
that's a
closed.
really interesting thought. What you're saying is really just that companies need to be creative and think, how does my product fit in this current environment? I know like Ryan, for example, he's working right now with a local honey company. What's the name, Ryan?
Harvest Lane Honey is the name of the
Harvest
company.
Lane Honey. And I'm just thinking to myself, one of the things that we're doing at our house now as a result of COVID-19 is we're doing a ton of baking. I've got banana bread coming out my ears, right? I've got all sorts of great stuff going on in my house.
Dude,
And
send some our
honey,
way. What, you can't keep this all to yourself, man.
I'm starting a Facebook website to sell it right now.
Yeah.
You know, if we get creative and think, you know, maybe honey is important right now because people are baking and they need to put honey into the bread that they're baking. And so how do I wedge my way in there? And that's interesting. It's just about being creative. And how do you help people feel like they're still living a normal life with your product as a result of what's going on right now?
Well, and it goes to Brian's point that times like this make kings out of people.
Yeah.
The people who are calm and thoughtful have the ability to do well in any environment. The people who are panicked and reactionary or emotional, that's a lot harder. So as long as you remain calm and thoughtful, you can look at that honey and say, what are some of the ways that we can drive demand? And what are some of the ways we can control the inbound supply? And I don't know about honey. That's probably hard to control the inbound supply. The bees just make it, right? So.
Well, the bees do make it, but also people get concerned about how do I work my own, at-home farm almost. You know, you see a lot more going to gardening. You see a lot more going to chickens. People that, because you can control those things, you can take steps right now to do that. So in times like this, those markets actually go up quite a bit.
Yeah. So my in-home manufacturing of toilet paper idea finally found an opportunity.
Genius.
Finally.
So
You've been on
I
that
want
for
to,
years, Casey.
I've got a few more questions. We're going to make these webinars not too long, but I got 43 attendees on the line. You guys that are listening in, if you have specific questions to your business, I'd love to make this webinar really meaningful for you and answer a couple of those questions. So please take advantage right now of the chat window. Type in your questions for Brian and Casey, and let's see if we can get a few of those answered before we finish the webinar. And while we answer those questions, also before we finish the webinar, we're going to ask Ryan to point you to where you can go on the website for UMA to get more help and answers about COVID-19 and resources that Utah Manufacturers Association has available to you. We've got some links on the website. So Ryan will touch on that as well. So go ahead, think of your questions, start typing those in, and I'll ask these guys just a couple more things.
Sadro, if I can, I've had a couple that have come offline. I could pose those right now. We've got a number of business owners and operators who are on the line, and they're wondering, what are you doing from an operational standpoint at your own company in order to deal with COVID-19? How are you guys managing that? What are you communicating to the team? How are you handling it there at your own site?
So fortunately, logistics and supply chain companies have been viewed as essential businesses. So we've been able to keep all of our facilities open still. Those people who can work from home are working from home. Those people tied to the warehouse activities and the production type activities, they're able to come in and work in that environment. We're adopting all of the WHO and CDC guidelines and making sure that those are implemented throughout the facilities, making sure that people feel comfortable with what's happening through regular communication. Actually, Casey sends a company communication about all of the latest information, and then the way that the company is handling that. And that's been well received by the employees, being able to know, hey, this is what's going on. And then down at the floor level, having conversation and training about this. These are the types of activities we're going to do. And they're all the basics. You know, we're regularly cleaning all of the workspaces. Individuals are encouraged to wash their hands effectively, to hand sanitize, to not touch their face.
Are you doing face masks? Are you providing face masks? Or?
The guidance, this is one area where we feel like we're staying really in tune with what's happening from the medical experts. The Attorney General has said that face masks are for the sick that those in a work setting who have a face mask, they're generally inclined to touch their face more and actually bring more of the virus or germs onto their face. And that's one of the disease vectors, right? So we're not doing masks. Gloves also have a tendency not to get washed or hand sanitized. So gloves actually accumulate more germs over time, and hand washing is more effective from those sources, both CDC and medical sources. So we feel like those are best practices. We're implementing those and trying to help keep our people healthy and working.
Yeah. About 2 weeks ago, we got together as a strategy team, realizing that this was something that could create a problem for our business. And so prior to the panic, we decided on some fundamental principles that would help us to make good choices as things changed and adjusted. One of those choices that we decided, one of those things that we decided was a fundamental principle, was to not replace the knowledge of experts with our own emotion or our own knowledge. And so we start anchoring everything around the CDC and the WHO and the other experts. We found that allows us then to be very rational about it. We're just looking and doing research and making determinations as each new recommendation comes up. So when people started strongly recommending office personnel working from home, we were able to make an immediate adjustment to that and get all of our office personnel working at home. When the recommendation said, hey, no masks, that actually increases the spread of coronavirus, we were able to implement that. When the state of Ohio, when the governor said we'd like all people who are working to take temperatures of their employees at the entrance, we were able to very quickly implement that activity. So we're not trying to replace any experts or think any brilliant thoughts. We're trying to respond to what the people who are professionals at medicine are saying we should do, and we're staying professional at supply chain, and that's allowed us to do that. One of the questions actually in the chat dovetails a little bit into this.
Yeah.
And this is Mark. I can't say your last name, Mark. I apologize. I'm not going to try. Motoriski, maybe. Anyway, Mark, supply chains are identified as essential businesses by the Department of Homeland Security. The Secretary has a sub group under the Department of Homeland Security that determines what essential businesses are, and supply chains are essential businesses. And so even in states where they have a shelter-in-place order, supply chains are accepted from that. You'll see major supply chain providers such as FedEx, UPS, or an us, and we've issued letters to our employees indicating the essential nature of their activity, what instruction from the federal government it falls under, and our belief that activity should continue. So all of our employees are both aware of that and able to provide that for law enforcement officers. As a result, and this is for Mike May's question, as a result, I don't see a substantial disruption in the transportation industry as a result of COVID-19. I think it's so critical. You're welcome. I think it's so critical and crucial to what we're doing as a country that we have to keep certain things flowing. And our supply chain in the food industries, our supply chain in the medical industries are crucial to people, whether they're working at home or not working at all. They're just fundamental and crucial to our existence.
Perfect. If anyone else has questions, go ahead and type them in the chat window. I guess I have just one more. We talked about the companies that are going through a decline. If the company is going through a sharp upswing, and getting some benefit out of this craziness, what are some things that they need to be thinking about and doing right now so that they don't get in trouble?
When we think about that, I think about the UMA members and the types of businesses that they're running, and you look at how do you stay when you have a lot of growth going on. How do you actually keep working? How do you not be stocked out of inventory? How do you not, how do you provide the products that you need? So a couple pieces of that include a full view of your inventory, where it is. So some of your members at UMA are going to market through distributors. Well, some of those distributors might be holding finished goods, or some of those additional channels might be holding finished goods that could be pulled back and put through another channel if it's not selling in one area. The same on raw goods. Raw goods could be in the marketplace, but alternatives need to be identified and be able to be brought in. One other thought about that was when a company doesn't have the ability to produce their product, a lot of times they do have some form of a prototype production capability. And to quickly move from a prototyping activity into a production activity is one way that they could meet critical needs for a critical piece of inventory that keep them going. I think when you look at like a company like these coffee companies that are growing right now at twice their normal pace, without a partner that can help them, it's going to be really hard for them to meet that growth. That's a benefit of using a partner like Visible Supply Chain Management, somebody who can handle the types of spike peaks and valleys that happen with these types of businesses, whether that's Visible or somebody else. The fact is those types of partnerships can really help, especially if they're geographically diverse.
Yeah, no, that makes tons of sense. Okay, do you have any more questions coming in, Ryan?
Yeah, I've got one over here that came up on Q&A that I thought would be, I did address privately, but I thought it would be a good one to bring up with the group. One of the questions is that if there's a company who's interested in switching over manufacturing something else like a hand sanitizer, for example, who should they contact? So just so everyone's aware, so I have been fielding those issues, and so is our UMA staff here to work on specific issues on people who want to either transfer, so they're doing different product lines, but also trying to find out what's needed in the marketplace. So we've been in contact with the hospitals, for example, to get specs on certain things that they do need, so we could supply to the manufacturing community to try and create business opportunities that might not exist elsewhere right now. So we've spent a lot of time talking about how to take advantage of these changing times. One of those is getting a better feel for what the marketplace needs. And so if you have some specific either needs or interest to switch things up, please contact us here at UMA. We can help you with that. I've been the point of contact for that. You can contact me at Ryan M, RYANM at umaweb.org in order to help facilitate that. So we'll continue that on.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's a great question. So we have several companies in Utah that are working to produce face masks, that are producing hand sanitizer, lots of companies that are retooling right now. If you want to know how to connect or participate in that effort, Ryan is the touch point for that. Go to umaweb.org, and then he can introduce you to some tools there, one of which is the MEP Connect, which is a resource to connect manufacturing companies that can help each other out and supply each other. I was just talking to New Era Manufacturing down in Cedar City the other day, and they've got the ability to produce parts that go into ventilators, and you know, it's amazing the capability that we have here in Utah. So many companies that build virtually anything, and it's just a matter sometimes of connecting the right people together to make some magic happen. So definitely go to umaweb.org and reach out to Ryan if you want to be part of that, making that magic happen.
And also, while you're talking about the website on umaweb.org, we've also coalesced all the information. We've been curating information for the Utah, especially for the Utah manufacturing community, but it does apply to manufacturing in general, to put it in one place. So as a business leader, owner, operator, you've got one place where you can get the latest information about COVID-19, but also how that applies specifically to you. For example, some who have cafeterias are wondering about, you know, how do the rules that apply to restaurants apply to my cafeteria and my manufacturing? We've addressed some of those issues. We've brought updates on all of the federal policy. There's a new law that will go into effect on April the 2nd. We've spent quite a bit of time of information on our website to talk about what is this new leave, and it affects companies especially that are under 500 employees, which are many of our manufacturing companies here in Utah. So you can go to umaweb.org, click on the COVID-19 link, and you'll see a lot of that information that we have brought together to help the manufacturing community kind of cut through all this to find specifically the things that apply to them. So those will all be very helpful resources.
Perfect. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate your time today. Can you leave us with any fantastic words of wisdom that are going to help Utah manufacturing companies get through this crazy time? Final thoughts.
I don't know about words of wisdom, but I'd reiterate that you know, if you're nimble and thoughtful, these are great opportunities. Everything's a great opportunity if you're nimble and thoughtful. And so it's about figuring out how what your unique skill set can do to help our entire economy and to help the people in your state and in your region and in the whole country. So just be nimble, be thoughtful, and pay attention to the experts, do what they're saying.
Brian, anything from you?
Oh, no, that's well said. Just best of luck to all of you working in your businesses, and as always, if there's a way that we can help, whether it's through, you know, some of the things we were talking about, or even in business, we're always happy to help.
Perfect. Hey, thanks a lot for your time today, guys, for your great advice.
Thank you.
UMA members, if you watch this video and you can tell me exactly how many times I touched my face during the video, you'll get a special prize from UMA today. Thank you for joining us. Please visit Utah Manufacturers Association's website. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're all in this together, and there's a great community here in Utah that's ready and willing to help no matter what you're struggling with. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you again. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.